difficult times for offshore renewables right now, and one question we were asking ourselves ahead of this conference is if the need for increased defense spending is putting an extra strain on renewables as budgets are obviously tight. That's the question at the center of our next panel, and to discuss this topic, I'd like to ask Rémi GRUET, Ambassador Matti ANTTONEN, Anna Pick, and Rana ADIB to join me. Please grab a microphone. Good morning. You want to have a seat? There's a microphone for you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. Anna Pick, vous êtes députée socialiste à l'Assemblée nationale. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Alors, dans une période marquée par des défis à la fois sécuritaires et climatiques, est-ce qu'on peut concilier cet impératif de sécurité et l'engagement climatique, ou est-ce qu'il faudra, selon vous, faire des arbitrages ?
Je crois qu'il nous faut absolument concilier ces deux objectifs. D'abord parce que, ça a été dit d'ailleurs précédemment, il y a un intérêt stratégique à développer les énergies nouvelles renouvelables. Elles sont la garantie de notre autonomie. Et aujourd'hui, on ne peut pas se permettre, au regard de la montée de ces grandes puissances vindicatives, agressives, qui détiennent les réserves en énergie carbonée, il nous faut absolument développer des alternatives qui nous permettront de ne pas être dépendantes. On a pu constater au cours de ces dernières années que les liens commerciaux ne suffisaient pas à pacifier le monde. Je crois que c'est la grande leçon de cette agression russe vis-à-vis de l'Ukraine. L'Allemagne croyait qu'avec les contrats importants qu'elle avait concernant le gaz, la multiplication des liens commerciaux, eh bien, on atteindrait finalement une pacification, une intégration plus grande de cet ancien bloc de l'Est. Force est de constater que les liens commerciaux ne suffisent pas à faire la paix, ne suffisent pas à maintenir la paix et donc la prospérité. Donc nous avons un intérêt majeur à investir dans notre autonomie énergétique.
Est-ce que vous avez donc l'impression qu'il n'y a pas vraiment de contradiction entre défense et énergie renouvelable ?
Non, il n'y a pas de contradiction, puisqu'il y a un concept qui parfois peut paraître un peu flou, qui s'appelle la défense globale. Bon, quand on dit défense globale, on ne comprend pas toujours très bien ce que ça veut dire. Il s'agit en fait de regarder tous les éléments de fragilité dans notre société et d'y mener des politiques de défense vis-à-vis de ça. L'énergie est évidemment, la ressource en énergie est évidemment une source de fragilité si on n'investit pas suffisamment dans notre capacité à avoir cette autonomie énergétique. Il y a d'autres fragilités comme vis-à-vis des attaques, des cyberattaques, comme effectivement l'ensemble des ingérences via les réseaux numériques. Mais l'énergie, c'est un levier sur lequel on peut agir très rapidement et qui permet à la fois de faire notre transition énergétique essentielle, celle que nous avons déjà planifiée pour avoir le zéro émission nette, et dans le même temps de nous renforcer, d'être en capacité de nous défendre face à des puissances extrêmement agressives aujourd'hui.
Alors en France, mais aussi ailleurs, il y a l'extrême droite qui est en train de gagner du terrain. Ici en France, le Rassemblement national et ses alliés détiennent 123 sièges au Parlement et leur candidate Marine Le Pen est clairement opposée à l'éolien, à l'énergie éolienne. Est-ce que ça, selon vous, ça se ressent dans les choix budgétaires qui sont faits ?
Alors, on le voit, il y a effectivement une pression sur le gouvernement pour finalement faire de l'idéologie avec l'énergie, ce qui est un vrai danger. Pour une raison très simple, c'est-à-dire que lorsqu'on fait de l'idéologie avec de l'énergie, on va choisir une énergie au détriment du mix énergétique. Or, toutes les trajectoires pour nous permettre d'arriver au zéro émission nette montrent que nous devons agir sur l'ensemble des leviers. Et il paraît absolument essentiel aujourd'hui de maintenir un socle d'énergie nucléaire qui soit pilotable dans un premier temps. Nous avons un intérêt majeur à monter très très vite en puissance sur les énergies nouvelles renouvelables, parce que d'abord elles sont plus facile à mettre en place, qu'aujourd'hui, ce qui paraissait de l'innovation est aujourd'hui des technologies à maturité et qu'il est temps, pour ne pas qu'elles s'écroulent tout simplement, qu'on investisse sur leur développement et leur déploiement. Et parce que de toute façon, au regard de ma circonscription, je suis bien placée pour savoir qu'un EPR, ça ne se construit pas en 2 ans. Donc nous avons un besoin d'électrification de nos usages qui va demander un apport énergétique électrique très rapide. Peut-être qu'à un moment, si nous déployons très rapidement, nous aurons un surplus de production d'électricité, mais tout ça devra se lisser très rapidement parce que le risque sinon c'est la pénurie entre 2035 et 2045 et ça nous ne pouvons pas nous permettre d'être dépendants à nouveau de la Russie mais aussi des États-Unis qui sont quand même aujourd'hui un allié extrêmement fluctuant. Donc nous avons besoin de construire notre autonomie et plus vite nous y parvenons, plus vite nous pouvons électrifier nos usages et moins de risques il y a pour la réindustrialisation, le maintien de filières industrielles extrêmement gourmandes en énergie, mais aussi tout simplement pour transformer notre mobilité notamment.
Donc on a besoin de cette montée en puissance pour des diverses raisons, mais est-ce que vous pensez que ça va être possible dans le sens où la France doit réduire son déficit qui a atteint qui dépasse les 5%? Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que cette nécessité d'économiser de l'argent a un impact sur les investissements, les soutiens pour les énergies renouvelables dans la mer?
Faire de la politique, c'est faire des choix. Ça, on est tous d'accord avec ça. Et les choix, ils sont variés. On a un déficit de 5%. Les dépenses publiques n'ont pas augmenté en part de PIB. Donc si elles n'ont pas augmenté en part de PIB, c'est que les transferts de fonds, les transferts d'argent ne sont plus les mêmes que ce qu'il y était il y a 10 ans. Je ne vous parle même pas de sous Chirac où nous avions une autre fiscalité et je pense que si nous y revenions tous ici, vous seriez en train d'hurler. Donc nous n'allons pas parler de ce genre de choses. Mais néanmoins, le dérèglement climatique ne va pas s'arrêter parce que nous avons 5% de déficit. Les objectifs que nous nous sommes fixés, nous ne le sommes pas fixés parce que c'était joli et puis qu'il nous fallait un nouveau sujet dans les conférences internationales. Il y a une nécessité vitale à prendre le chemin de la transition. Et je crois que c'est vrai, nous avons 5%, mais nous pouvons trouver d'autres solutions. Et que si nous arrêtons d'investir sur notre transition énergétique, si nous arrêtons d'investir sur le monde universitaire et la recherche dans l'école et dans la santé, vous aurez des salariés malades, vous aurez des salariés qui ne seront pas en capacité d'avoir cette résilience dans un monde qui change énormément et vous aurez évidemment aussi un point d'arrêt à l'ensemble des investissements qu'ici vous avez pu faire dans les filières des énergies nouvelles renouvelables. Donc oui, il faut faire des choix. Les choix, il faut les faire correctement. Il faut que ce soit des choix d'avenir, des choix transformateurs. Nous ne serons plus jamais dans les années 90 et ce n'est pas la peine d'en rêver. Donc oui, il faut faire évidemment la part des choses, trouver les bons équilibres. Il y a des bons équilibres à trouver. Il faut aussi trouver des recettes et que la réindustrialisation, elle est aussi possible à travers ces nouvelles filières des énergies nouvelles renouvelables et que là, il y a un levier. Et que, en fait, d'avoir investi pour ensuite reculer, c'est juste de l'argent jeté par les fenêtres. Donc oui, il y a des choix à faire, mais ces choix-là, ils doivent nous permettre de construire l'avenir. Ils doivent nous permettre la réindustrialisation en France, de ramener les emplois en France et puis de valoriser ce que nous sommes, de continuer la recherche et l'innovation dans tous ces lieux qui sont des perspectives d'avenir. Donc ne reculons pas. Il y a évidemment peut-être des moments un peu difficiles, mais ce n'est pas en faisant des choix restrictifs ou en misant tout sur une seule source d'énergie, celle déjà connue. Et c'est un peu le risque avec l'extrême droite, puisque ce qu'ils nous disent, c'est misons uniquement sur la relance du nucléaire. Alors, relance, je ne sais pas. Maintenons ce socle tout le temps qu'on en a besoin. Mais en tout cas, si on ne fait pas le choix d'utiliser tous les leviers, nous n'aurons rien du tout et nous risquons la pénurie.
Est-ce que vous avez l'impression que d'autres groupes politiques partagent ce point de vue? Est-ce qu'ils voient ce potentiel industriel dans cette filière?
Oui, je crois que déjà, j'ai réussi à coaliser un certain nombre de parlementaires à l'Assemblée nationale, notamment pour que enfin le gouvernement prenne conscience que la technologie hydrolienne arrivait à un point de maturité qui n'était plus seulement une perspective d'avenir, mais qui demandait un déploiement rapide. On est quand même, pour vous dire, des insoumis jusqu'aux républicains en capacité de porter cette voix. Alors il y a des reculs sans arrêt, mais nous trouvons des points d'appui. Alors, à gauche, ça pose pas de problème sur les énergies nouvelles renouvelables. Dans le bloc central, dans ce qui est appelé le socle commun, c'est pas très commun, en tout cas, c'est plutôt très varié comme point de vue. On a encore besoin de convaincre, parce que là aussi, il y a tentation de miser sur uniquement la relance nucléaire. Et donc, il faut continuer, puisqu'en ce moment, vous le savez, il y a une proposition de loi qui est débattue depuis hier après-midi à l'Assemblée nationale. Et nous sommes tous ceux qui sont les promoteurs de cette réindustrialisation via ces nouvelles filières de l'énergie. Nous sommes tous très inquiets, en réalité, puisque nous voyons la disparition d'un certain nombre de points importants qui avaient été actés par le gouvernement dans la proposition de PPE qui a été mise par 2 fois à la concertation. Et donc ces reculs nous inquiètent particulièrement. Je crois qu'aujourd'hui, il faut se mobiliser, puisque cette proposition de loi Grémier, elle a été accordée dans l'agenda de l'Assemblée, parce que Marine Le Pen a fait pression sur le Premier ministre pour que soit acté un certain nombre de points concernant le nucléaire, et qu'on acte des questions de mix énergétique. Oui, qu'on soit dans le rejet des énergies nouvelles renouvelables, eh bien, c'est de prendre un risque majeur pour notre autonomie stratégique.
Merci beaucoup, Anna Pick, députée socialiste à l'Assemblée nationale. Let's move a bit further northeast now with you, Matti ANTTONEN. You're Finland's ambassador to France. Thank you as well for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Your country shares a long border with Russia. You're much closer to the front line, so to say. So I'd like to ask you, to what extent, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the public discussion has changed? Is there is there more? Do people say we need to invest more in defense? And does that come along with an increased need to invest in renewables, according to you?
I think it's clear that with this war, which has started or intensified 3 years ago, has of course influenced our immediate region, and we are going to invest more in defense. At the same time, we have already decarbonized our electricity production. We have a very similar system as here in France. 40% comes from nuclear, and basically all the rest from renewables. And so we are in a lucky position, and we have also most of our, or almost all our renewables coming from production which is not subsidized by state at all. So it's all market-based. And so when we are investing in defense, that's something which the state takes care of. On the other hand, the energy sector is basically all market, and the state has no role in financing it.
Right, and do you think there's a perceived trade-off between defense and renewable spending? Is it a contradiction for you?
No, because defense is something the state takes care of, and then the market takes care of the energy sector. And I think that is how it should be. In the end anyway, the consumer is paying, so why should the state have a role in this business?
Sorry. I know that your country doesn't have a lot of offshore wind farms right now, but there's a tender that is supposed to be later this year. Was it easy to find support for that tender, the money for it?
For the moment, we have only one rather small offshore field, and that's because onshore fields, there's so much potential. Still, at the moment, around 25% of electricity comes from onshore wind. In 2 years, that will be over 30. And there's a lot of place still, and it's the most competitive form of producing electricity. Now the big question is, because it's intermittent, how to store this electricity. Batteries are rather expensive. What we have is that we have in every city a district heating network, and this district heating is being decarbonized in a very fast pace. Much of that will be happening through electric boilers, which are using the heat when there is a cheap electricity available, and then they store this heat for the winter or for the season when you need heating. So it's good for the wind energy producers because it's probably pushing up the price when there is a lot of energy available, and at the same time it's good for the consumers of heating because their heating costs will go down, because now you have something which is decarbonized, rather cheap electricity to heat up the housing. So I think it's a win-win, and close to Helsinki they are building the world's biggest heat storage. 3 caverns, which are 400 meters long, 40 meters high, 25 meters wide, and which are stocking hot water when you have excess electricity or other sources available, and then they are using it during the winter months when you need heating. So there are a lot of opportunities, different kind of solutions, how to cope with the intermittence of the system.
I know that the Baltic countries, for example, they are going to construct offshore wind energy, and part of that plan is to export a lot of this energy because they're actually quite sufficient already. They have enough electricity in the country. Is that also part of what's planned in Finland?
At the moment, we are basically self-sufficient in electric energy. The country is very much electrifying itself. As I said, heating is being electrified at a very fast pace. We don't have any more use of coal in heating. Gas is really much less than before. And then also oil use is going down fast. Then the big question is that when there will be more and more electricity, what will you do with that? And one of the questions is that maybe you can turn that into hydrogen. And then what we have also in abundance is that we have a lot of biogenic CO2 coming from the forest industry. So combining this biogenic CO2 with the hydrogen produced by renewable energy or other low carbon energy can make e-fuels, which is a possibility for aircraft and then shipping, because we know that the cars are going to be electrified by batteries, but what is the solution for air transport and shipping? Most likely they will be using fuels, e-fuels also in the future, and that might be one possibility of exporting this extra electricity.
Well, another part of this question is obviously the infrastructure. There have been reports of at least one incident of suspected sea cable sabotage of Finland. To what extent is there concern about that infrastructure? Also, when you add renewable energies offshore, are you going to strengthen it? What's the plan?
There was this incident this winter, and there have been other incidents before. The country is self-sufficient with electricity, so we are not worried about our supply. We have a very strong connection in the north, land connection with Sweden. We are building more. We have also undersea cables to Sweden, and then we have these 2 cables to Estonia. I don't really see this a major problem, especially from the point of view of the offshore wind. We have had a lot of offshore wind projects in other parts of the Baltic Sea and North Sea, and I think they have been able to export their production without any hiccups. And I believe that when there will be more offshore wind in the Baltic Sea, that will happen basically without any problems. That's not the major challenge for the offshore wind in the Baltic Sea.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Matti ANTTONEN, Finnish ambassador to France. Now, let's have a look at the chatter in Brussels with you, Rémi GRUET. Good morning. You're CEO.
Good morning.
Hello. You're CEO of Industry Network Ocean Energy Europe. And so the EU has put on the table a few plans. Recently, we have the NZIA, the Net Zero Industry Act, which aims, amongst other things, for Europe to manufacture at least 40% of the clean technologies deployed here also in Europe, and has the goal to invest 600 billion euros per year starting in 2030. There's also Rearm Europe, through which the EU aims to invest 800 billion euros in defense until 2030. Do you think these two packages are contradictory?
So not at all, and I think Anna touched on it. I think we can protect ourselves by saving the planet. It's a lot easier, or it's a lot harder rather, to topple 1,000 wind turbines or to disconnect 1,000 tidal turbines than it is to disconnect a coal-fired power plant, a gas-fired power plant, or a nuke. They're much bigger, there are much lesser numbers of those, and they're easier to target. So that's really a first answer, is renewable energy is in fact an energy security aspect of defense. And then a second point, so renewables actually will help make the money available for defense, if you like. And Commissioner Jorgensen said last week that we spent, since the beginning of the Ukraine war, more money on importing fossil fuels from Russia than we actually spent on helping Ukraine defend itself, all right? And that's in the last 3 years. So if you replace all that fossil fuel import with renewables made in Europe, built in Europe, producing in Europe, then all that money suddenly becomes available for helping Ukraine again. So I think you have a double impact here, where you increase your energy security and at the same time you free money for helping Ukraine defend itself. And maybe a last point is, whatever the states are going to invest in renewables to help them get to commercial scales for the ones who aren't yet, it's going to be orders of magnitude below the figures that you've just put on the table. I mean, 800 billions. I wish we had that for planning tidal and wave to the future, but I don't think that's the case right now.
So less money than what's needed for defense, but do you think we will find that money? Money is scarce.
Yeah, so again, I think two things. Very importantly, like, how much money do we need for defense? I don't know. How much money people are floating they're very big figures. I don't think Putin is going to invade Europe. So the money we need for defense, probably not for defending European assets per se. It's for helping Ukraine, maybe, I mean, Belarus is actually more in line with Putin. But yeah, helping Ukraine defend itself. So it's probably not the type of budget that we've heard. But anyway, putting that aside, the purely defense topic, I think one thing that people often mix up is public money and private investment. Like, you're asking me how much money do we need for defense, and this is a purely public spending question. And the other question is, how much do we invest in renewable? And this is a purely private investment question. The money that goes to building wind farms, solar panels, commercial technologies at the moment is bank money, is investors' money, is utility money. It has nothing to do with the state. So there are two different budgets, if you like. Now, if you look at promoting innovative renewables, say floating wind, floating solar, tidal wave, all of these technologies are not commercial yet. They will need a bit of support, and I insist on the word. It's not bankrolling projects. It's about leveraging with public funding private investment. And once you've built your first project, you've gotten on the cost curve, and then the next project becomes easier to finance with less funding from the state. So it's a positive reinforcement, if you like. And the last point is, finding money is all about political choices, right, Anna? You need to decide in which area you're going to put the money. And I think industry, the value that the renewable industry is bringing to Europe is going to be a key point going forward in that discussion.
Well, another argument that Anna Pick was making earlier on is the industrial argument.
Absolutely,
do you think that's something that's really having an impact on a European level?
Yeah, I think so, because, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm yet to hear a politician say that he doesn't want any jobs in his country, right? It's generally something that, whether you're left extreme, right extreme, or centrist, everybody wants more jobs in the country, especially manufacturing jobs, because they also bring service jobs down the line, right? So I think that's an argument that everybody can hear. Obviously, Rassemblement National is not in power at the moment, so it's very easy from the benches to attack anybody who's putting stuff forward. When you're in charge and you need to put legislation forward, it's a very different topic. Then you need to actually weigh the pros and cons, and industry will become a very, very strong pro in that debate. And the second point is competitiveness, because that's also something we hear. We need more competitiveness. Europe needs to be more competitive. And renewables lower the price on the electricity market. They lower the price of electricity. And that's a huge competitiveness advantages, whether you're making clean steel with electric arc technology, or whether you're baking your croissant and 30% of the price electricity, right? And we don't want people eating less croissants, do we? So we need more renewables.
Thank you very much, Rémi GRUET. Now let's zoom out even more with you, Rana. ADIB, you are CEO of renewable energy NGO REN21. Good morning. And your organization is about to publish your annual Renewables Global Status Report. From your perspective, you obviously have the global perspective. Has defense been the elephant in the room around the world when governments have been talking about renewables investment?
I guess during the last month, we have clearly seen that defense and energy security has led in many regions to competitive or decisions on where to put the money. I think this is a reality. I think, however, that this is a short-term reality, and the biggest elephant in the room is the fact that our energy system, our economy, and our political system has been built around fossil fuel, with the fact that as a result there is, first of all, industrial lobbying that is very clearly leading to the fact that today, even though you might have political leadership that clearly understand that, I really like this part of global defense, renewable energy is fundamental for global defense, that it allows to really have local value creation, that allows to decarbonize, but also to build basically more prosperous societies. So there are leaders who understand this and also put in place a policy and regulative frameworks. However, we also know from the history that the geopolitical tension is directly linked to fossil fuel. Why? Because we have the dependence of few fossil fuel producing and exporting countries. So I would say the elephant in the room, yes, but the fossil fuel is much more the elephant in the room because it has still a lot of weight on the political space. And the other part is that to some extent the focus on energy security and security also is an opportunity, because from the renewable energy side, and I think this has been one of the challenges of the past, that very often renewable energy was seen purely as a decarbonization approach at the political level. But in reality, it is much more than this. It is basically building energy security, it's building resilience, it's building local value, it's opportunities for industrialization. And I think very often we forget how important energy is actually to fuel our economies in general. And maybe just one point in terms of the resilience to crisis and the resilience to conflict. The reality is that renewable energy, given its decentralized nature, first of all leads to the fact that all countries have homegrown energy. That's one part. But also the decentralized infrastructure leads to the fact that basically the energy infrastructure is less attackable in conflict times. Let's take the example of Iran now. What is Israel focusing on? Very clearly the energy infrastructure, fuel supply, and so on. So the decentralized nature is actually not only a resilience to climate change, but also a resilience to conflict. And yes.
Do you think, you've just been talking about the strong fossil fuel lobby, do you think that perceptions have flipped though? Are people now aware that we really need renewables?
I think indeed perceptions have flipped, and from Rent-in-One side, I mean, what is really interesting about Rent-in-One, it's not an NGO, but we're a network of governments, industry, science, academia, and civil society. I'm highlighting this because what is interesting is that indeed we see that the discussions are changing, the discourse is changing, the misinformation available in public and being used as reference is changing again, and for some aspects we need to come back to some awareness raising from several years ago. There is, however, one thing which is really different. Today, and this is unfortunately not most of the SEANERGY sources, but when we're looking at solar photovoltaics and wind, they are cheaper than all the other options that exist. And I think this is something that is extraordinary, and the cost is falling. When we're looking at battery, costs have dropped down, and they will certainly continue to go down, which means, and this directly reflects in facts and figures, which is that almost 90% globally of new installed capacities in power is building on renewables. And that's something that is changing. The economic narrative is changing. Now, that's a positive part. What I think is important to highlight, however, is that we have tended to only look at the generation cost. And for instance, in Europe, we clearly see the investment in infrastructure is fundamental. The investment in storage, whether it is batteries, pump storage, long-duration energy storage, etc., is fundamental. But also the investment in the transitions of the energy-consuming sectors. And unfortunately, globally, we see that there is not a policy alignment, basically. This is something that requires a lot of attention. I think, again, here is an opportunity because the energy-consuming sectors know very much that renewable fuels or renewable electricity means independence from fluctuating fossil fuel prices, means in some regions resilient energy supply and secure energy supply. I think what is important today in the current geopolitical context is very clearly to elevate these narratives up, provide facts and figures, have great examples, as we have heard here. I think it's where we have countries that are already self-sufficient to a large extent in basically the electricity supply, but even in energy supply, to also show that these transitions are possible, but then also analyze what these transitions mean in those countries in terms of fossil fuel independence, geopolitical stability, and so on.
Well, let's hope the best for the future. Thank you very much. That's unfortunately all the time we have. Thank you, ANTTONEN. I'm so sorry for this. ANTTONEN. Thank you, Rémi GRUET. Thank you, Ambassador Matti. Thank you, Rana ADIB. And thank you for listening.